Who am I? Have you found the answer to your life? If not, or if you are still uncertain about your true nature, then this video is for you. This is eternal light. It is no coincidence that you are here because everything in this universe is orchestrated by God. Perhaps He wants you to know more than you already do. And with the 6 signs I am about to share, you will understand exactly what God is trying to tell you. Most importantly, if you recognize sign number 6 in your life, then without a doubt, you are someone chosen by God for a divine mission. And naturally, understanding your true self will become clearer than ever. To ensure you are fully present and focused on God's message, take action. Hit the like button or comment, "I am ready." Now let's begin. Sign 1, an unending restlessness. Beneath the veil of mist that cloaked the streets where the world still slumbered in the embrace of the night, the chosen one stood in silence. Everything around him seemed unchanged. The gray buildings loomed just as they had yesterday. The people bustled about their lives with the same concerns, and existence flowed on like an endless river. Yet within him, a storm was rising. There was no clear reason for him to feel this way. He had everything an ordinary person could wish for: a stable job, a peaceful home, fulfilling relationships. But like a song played in the wrong key, like a door that never fully shut, something within him refused to be still. At first, he thought he was merely tired. But no, this was not a fleeting weariness that could be swept away with a warm cup of tea or a deep sleep. It was a restlessness, a persistent unease, as if an invisible force were calling his name. The more he tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. He buried himself in work, sought solace in the things that once made him happy, but nothing could quiet the rising tide inside him. And then he began to understand this was not meaningless dissatisfaction, nor the symptom of a midlife crisis. This was a calling. Centuries ago, Moses had felt the same. He could have lived a life of luxury in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth, respect, and power. But each time he saw a Hebrew slave being beaten, each time he heard the cries of his people, a fire ignited in his heart. A fire that, no matter how hard he tried to extinguish, refused to die. And so, Moses chose. Not everyone understood his choice. They called it madness. To abandon everything for an uncertain journey, a path filled with hardship and peril. But for Moses, there was no other choice. When God calls, the chosen cannot turn away, and neither could he. Perhaps he was not a prophet, not a man destined to free a nation, but he knew this calling was real. It was not a whimsical dream, not a delusion, but an invisible thread pulling him towards something greater than himself. Yet the road ahead would not be easy. It demanded that he step away from safety, venture into uncharted lands, and accept that his life would never be the same. He would no longer be the man he once was. There would be no more quiet days, no more hiding in the familiarity of routine. But in return, he would find himself. And that was why, in the stillness of the night, amidst the silence of the city, he stood and listened, because the chosen one cannot turn away from his calling. Sign 2. Fierce spiritual battles. Every great story is built upon relentless battles. No one becomes a hero by walking a path lined with roses. The chosen ones never have an easy life, for light cannot be forged without first enduring the darkness. The trials faced by the chosen are not mere passing winds. They are not just bad days or minor failures. No, these individuals are tormented by the very things they love, betrayed by those they trust most, cast into the abyss with no hand reaching to pull them back up. Yet something within them, a fire the world cannot extinguish, refuses to let them fall. Joseph is an example. He was not a warrior, not born into a mighty dynasty, nor did he wield power from an early age. But one thing was undeniable: he was chosen. And because of that, his life was a series of unimaginable tragedies. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, deceived, thrown into prison for a crime he did not commit. Anyone else might have lost faith, but not Joseph, because he understood that the suffering he endured was not God's abandonment, but his preparation. Darkness does not spare the chosen. When you decide to walk the path of light, you become a target for forces you may not even realize exist. The battles will not only rage around you, but within you, in your mind, in your heart, in your faith. These are wars unseen, yet fiercer than any conflict recorded in history. For the enemy does not merely seek to defeat you, he wants you to surrender yourself. When drowning in despair, the chosen may ask, "Why me?" But the right question is not why, but what will I do with this challenge? Joseph could have fallen, but he stood. And because he did not give up, he became the instrument through which an entire nation was saved. Had he never been sold into slavery, he would never have reached Egypt. Had he never been imprisoned, he would never have met the guide who led him into Pharaoh's palace. And had he never endured the depths of suffering, he would never have become strong enough to bear a responsibility far greater than himself. This is what the chosen must understand. Spiritual battles are not signs of failure. They are signs that you are on the right path. If your life is easy, perhaps you have not truly begun your journey. But if it feels as though the whole world is against you, if you are surrounded by trials too great to overcome, know this: you are being prepared for something greater. When the storm rises around you, do not run. Stand firm. Remember that you are not alone. The chosen never fight alone. And no matter how fierce the battle, no matter how deep the darkness, light always finds its way to those who refuse to abandon their faith. Because the chosen are not those who have never fallen. They are those who, though crushed by the weight of the world, still rise and take another step forward. Sign 3, closed doors. Closed doors, in the eyes of an ordinary person, may seem like signs of failure, an unfortunate setback on the path to achieving great goals. But for the chosen, they are not merely obstacles or meaningless trials. They are the careful arrangements of the Almighty. God not only opens the right paths, but he also closes the wrong ones. Those who are chosen by God understand that sometimes closed doors are not rejections, but protections. Imagine a long road with countless winding branches appearing at every turn, each path holding its own allure. An ordinary traveler may pick a direction at random, hoping for luck, but the chosen have an invisible hand guiding them. Sometimes that hand does not merely pull them forward, but firmly prevents them from stepping onto paths that do not belong to them. Rejection, failure, missed opportunities, all are orchestrations of God, forcing them to walk by faith rather than by the limited vision of man. Let us look at the story of Abraham. God called him to leave his homeland, his family, everything he had ever known, to embark on a journey with an unknown destination. By human reasoning, this was nothing short of reckless, a perilous adventure without any guarantees. But the chosen are not permitted to live by human certainty. They are called to live by faith. Had Abraham refused that call, had he clung to the familiarity of home, could he have become the father of a great nation? If the doors of comfort and ease had not closed behind him, would he ever have found the path that God had set apart for him? What can we learn from that story? When a door closes before you, instead of feeling disappointed or angry, ask yourself, what is God protecting me from? Where is he trying to lead me? Remember, God never closes a door without a reason. Sometimes that reason is not immediately clear, but the chosen must learn to trust in his plan, even when they cannot see the full picture. The chosen cannot dwell in regret. They understand that every obstacle carries meaning. If you are pursuing a dream job but face repeated rejection, perhaps it is because God has something better waiting for you. If you are trying to build a relationship, but everything keeps falling apart, maybe it is because God knows that person is not the companion you truly need. If a promising plan of yours suddenly collapses, perhaps God is making way for something far greater than you have ever imagined. The chosen must learn to accept closed doors with steadfast hearts. They do not see them as rejections, but as clear signs that they are being redirected onto a different path, a path that only God knows in advance. Sometimes that means walking in darkness with no light except the unwavering belief that God is always there, preparing the best for them. The life of the chosen is never simple. They cannot always walk the easy road because God has not called them to live an ordinary life. Every trial, every disappointment, every closed door is merely preparation for a grander journey. Closed doors are not the end. They are deliberate arrangements to keep you from straying away from God's plan. Remember, no one can walk in the wrong direction if they allow God to lead them. Everything that happens in life carries significance. For the chosen, closed doors are not something to fear. They are reminders that they are being prepared for something better, something greater, something only God can fully see. Confirmation from multiple sources. Sometimes God's signs do not come in the form of roaring thunder or blinding lights from heaven. Instead, they appear subtly, weaving into your life like pieces of a grand puzzle, each small yet carrying an inexplicable weight. A Bible verse that keeps appearing before your eyes, a passing remark from an old friend, or an event that seems insignificant but stirs something deep within your soul. These are not mere coincidences, but confirmations arriving from different sources. Gideon was one of those who doubted God's calling. When entrusted with the mission to rescue Israel, he did not immediately rush forward. Instead, he asked God for confirmation. Not once, but twice. First, he laid a fleece on the ground and prayed for it to be wet while the surrounding ground remained dry. God answered, but Gideon, still grappling with fear and uncertainty, asked for another sign, this time for the fleece to stay dry while the ground around it became soaked. And God, in his infinite patience, answered again. These confirmations were not because God needed to prove himself, but because humans need reassurance. We live in a world where doubt is second nature, where faith is constantly challenged by reason and practical worries. That is why God does not simply speak in isolation, but reinforces his guidance through multiple sources, making the path he desires for us unmistakably clear. Think of a time in your life when you stood at a crossroads, uncertain of which path to take. Perhaps you had recurring dreams about something but dismissed them as tricks of the mind. Then suddenly you stumbled upon a Bible verse that echoed your exact dilemma. And the very next day, a friend, completely unaware of your thoughts, uttered words that seemed to strike at the core of your concern. That is no longer coincidence. That is confirmation. Those chosen by God often experience moments like these. They are not lucky wanderers who stumble into their destiny, but are guided by the intricate signs God places in their lives. These signs may come through simple conversations, sermons overheard by chance, or even books and films they had no intention of engaging with, yet felt inexplicably drawn to. God has countless ways to speak, and when he wants you to recognize something, he will not just say it once. He will repeat it in different ways until you can no longer ignore it. There's a story of a man who longed to become a missionary, but was unsure if it was truly God's will. One day, while praying, he opened the Bible and read, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." His heart stirred, yet he remained unconvinced. The next day, while sitting on a bus, he overheard a conversation between two strangers. Sometimes, if you have a dream, maybe that's exactly what God wants you to pursue. That evening, while watching television, he heard another seemingly random statement. Do not be afraid to step forward in faith. The signs kept coming, piece by piece, until he could no longer doubt. God did not shout into his ears, "Go!" But he whispered into his soul in various ways until the confirmation became as clear as the morning sun. God's confirmation never comes with confusion or fear. When you recognize his guidance, an unexplainable peace will settle in your heart, even if the road ahead remains challenging. If you have been praying about something and continue to receive confirmations from different sources, do not dismiss them. They may be divine instructions that God has long prepared for you. The journey of the chosen is never walked alone, and God never sends them forward without signs. If you are listening, listen more closely. If you are searching, open your eyes wider. The signs are always there, waiting for you to be ready to receive them. Sometimes, an unexplainable urge is the clearest evidence of a calling. Others may walk past the ashes and see nothing but rubble, but you see a city worth rebuilding. When something weighs so heavily on your mind that you cannot ignore it, it may very well be a sign that God is calling you. Nehemiah was neither a warrior nor a prophet when the burden suddenly fell upon him. He was a cupbearer, a job that seemed entirely unrelated to the mission of rebuilding Jerusalem. But when he heard of the city's destruction, his heart was stirred. He could not sleep, could not go about his daily tasks without feeling his soul crushed by grief for his homeland. He wept, he prayed, and then he acted. Perhaps you have experienced this feeling too. A persistent frustration over injustice, a deep concern for the forgotten, or an overwhelming desire to change something. While others can walk away and continue with their lives, you find yourself unable to do the same. You wonder why you cannot ignore it like they do. But that in itself is the sign. That is the calling. Those who are chosen do not always receive a clear mission from the start. They often begin with an unshakable feeling, an unusual burden that no one else seems to carry. Moses saw the oppression of his people and could not remain indifferent. David, though just a shepherd boy, could not stand to see Goliath mock the name of God. They were not the strongest or the most qualified, but they were the ones who could not ignore the voice stirring within them. If something keeps pressing on your heart, pay attention. Do not dismiss it as coincidence. Instead, seek confirmation from God, just as Nehemiah did, through prayer, reflection, and a willingness to act. Because sometimes those burdens are the clues to a great mission you were born to fulfill. Sign 6. Feeling unworthy but still called. In this world, there are those born with a mission they never chose. They are not the ones who confidently wield swords, nor are they great figures of noble lineage. On the contrary, they are often ordinary people, sometimes weak, sometimes filled with doubt about themselves. And then, on a day no one expects, the call comes, not in the grandeur of thunder or blinding light, but within their own fears and limitations. They feel unworthy, yet they are chosen. Moses once stared at his trembling hands as he heard God's voice calling from the burning bush. A stammerer, an exile, a man who had taken a life in a moment of anger, none of these qualities seemed to fit the image of a great leader. "I am not the right person," he stammered, trying to refuse. But God did not ask if he was qualified. He only needed to know that he was willing. Moses' story is not unique. When Gideon heard God's call, he looked around as if hoping he was speaking to someone else. A mighty warrior? No. He was the weakest in the smallest clan of an unremarkable tribe. When God told him to rise, he asked for a sign, then another, and another, because it was hard to believe that someone like him could be chosen to lead a nation. But God does not call the perfect. He perfects those he calls. And then there was another man, one who was once the terror of the early believers. Paul did not just doubt Christianity, he hunted and persecuted those who followed Christ. He was the nightmare of the disciples. And yet, on the road to Damascus, a light struck him down. The voice of God called out, not to condemn, not to punish, but to choose. A man who once persecuted the church became its greatest apostle. That is how God works. Perhaps you are like them. You look in the mirror and see only a person full of flaws. You look at your past and see only mistakes, missed opportunities, weaknesses you try to hide. You think that if God were to choose someone for something great, he surely would not choose you. But you are wrong. God does not see you as you see yourself. He sees not only who you are, but who you can become. When he calls, it is not because you are already ready. It is because he will make you ready. If you feel unworthy yet drawn toward a mission, do not be afraid. For history has shown those who are chosen are rarely the ones who see themselves as worthy, but they are always the ones who walk in faith. What to do when you recognize these signs? There comes a moment in life when we stand at a crossroads, surrounded by extraordinary signs that the world cannot explain. It could be an unshakable restlessness, a door closing at just the right time, or a confirmation that echoes like the voice of destiny. And then we realize, perhaps God is calling us. But what do we do next? Answering a call from the Almighty is not like receiving an acceptance letter from Hogwarts. There is no owl delivery, no wax seal, no map guiding each step. God does not make everything easy from the start because he wants to test our faith. And in these moments, those who are called will face 3 of the greatest challenges: prayer, patience, and obedience. Prayer. Ask God for guidance and wisdom. A person may possess all the knowledge in the world, but without God's guidance, it is nothing more than meaningless words in a dusty book. When we recognize signs from him, the first thing to do is pray. But not just any prayer. Real, honest prayer that opens the heart, asks questions, listens, and waits for an answer. Imagine Moses standing before the burning bush, his hands trembling, his heart filled with doubt. He was not a warrior nor an eloquent speaker, yet when God called, he listened. Similarly, prayer is not a ritual, it is a conversation. And in that conversation, there are times when God answers immediately, but there are also times when he responds with silence. Yet, do not mistake God's silence for his absence. It is a test of our patience. Patience. God does not always reveal his plan immediately. If you have ever waited for an acceptance letter from Hogwarts that never arrived, you understand this feeling. There are dreams we believe are within reach, yet they move at a pace that feels like they are traveling backward in time. Those chosen by God must learn patience because his plan does not follow human schedules. Joseph spent years in the shadows before stepping onto Egypt's throne. David, anointed as king while still a boy, had to flee from Saul for years before he could finally reign. Patience is not passive waiting. It is continuing to work, continuing to believe, even when everything seems hopeless. Perhaps God has given you a vision, a dream, but it has yet to come to pass. You look around and see others moving forward while you seem stuck in place. But do not confuse delay with denial. God never forgets his promises. When the time is right, the door will open. Obedience. When God opens the way, have the courage to step forward. Perhaps the scariest thing is not failing to hear the call, but hearing it and being too afraid to step forward. When God opens the way, it is not always a golden pathway leading to glory. Sometimes it is a rugged road filled with challenges. But remember, those chosen by God must always endure trials before they reach triumph. Look at Peter. When he saw Jesus walking on water, he asked for a miracle to do the same. And when Jesus told him to step out of the boat, he did the impossible. He walked on water. But the moment he allowed fear to take hold, he began to sink. This teaches us an important lesson. When God calls, do not hesitate. Obedience does not mean the absence of fear. It means taking action despite it. When a door opens, walk through it. When a dream is placed in your heart, pursue it. When God speaks, listen and act. The signs from God are not always as clear as a letter delivered to your doorstep. Sometimes they are gentle whispers, uncanny coincidences, or relentless stirrings in your soul that you cannot ignore. But recognizing the signs is only the first step. More important is knowing what to do with them. Pray to seek his guidance. Be patient to wait for the right moment, and obey when the path is set before you. Because when God chooses you, he does not choose you because you are perfect. He chooses you because he knows you will become something greater than you ever imagined. And perhaps that is the true miracle. I believe you have found the answer for yourself. If you are chosen by God, congratulations. May you live a life worthy of his calling. But if you are not among the chosen, do not worry. Come to God, build a close and sincere relationship with him, and in time, you will receive what you need from him, especially peace and unconditional love. In the upcoming videos, I will help you draw closer to God, or at the very least, experience his divine protection. If you found the messages in this video meaningful, or if you know someone who needs to hear them, share and spread this sacred energy. Subscribe to Eternal Light and join us on the beautiful journey ahead. For now, goodbye and see you soon. Thank you for watching until the end. May peace be with you all. Amen.